I am about to get started. So once again, thank you for coming. Good evening. My name's Lorraine Griffin, and I am with the Prince George's County Memorial Library System. Welcome to our virtual visit to the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. A little housekeeping. Everyone should be muted until we get to the participation part of the program, when we have the Q&A and when we have our discussion. So if you could keep your self muted, we'll get to a part where we'll all be able to discuss and have fun. Thank you for participating in tonight's program. I want to thank my co-hosts, Elizabeth, Marcia, Kmar, who will be assisting me with the program. And a special thanks goes to Jennifer Epstein of the National Park Service for her participation tonight as well. Within PGCMLS, I'd like to thank my colleagues, Steve, Drew in Digital Services, as well as the staff of the Public Relations and Program Services departments. And a special thanks goes to all the members of the Black History Month History and Culture Committee. Let's see. So thank you for participating in tonight's program. The order of the program will be in acknowledgement of Native Americans and their lands, highlight of the key points in Dr. King's life. Then Ranger Epstein will lead us on a virtual tour of the King Memorial, and she'll take a few questions. Then we'll discuss Dr. King's legacy and how his inspirational quotes on the memorial have impacted each of us and the nation. And at the end of the program, we'll list some additional library resources on Dr. King and the Civil Rights Movement, as well as information on the National Park Service. Sorry. As residents of Prince George's County, we acknowledge that we gather on the traditional lands of the Mattaponic, the Patuxent, the Piscataway, the Moynier, the Pamunkey, and the Accokeek, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land and most especially the people who have stewarded these lands throughout the generation. This calls on us to commit to continuing to learn how to be better allies of Native peoples and better stewards of the land. We also acknowledge the overlapping history of Maryland as a slaveholding state, where African peoples were enslaved for over 200 years. Please join me in a moment of silent acknowledgement. Thank you. So we're going to drop in the chat now a few of the quotes of Dr. King that we're going to be discussing later on, so that you might think about them as the program goes along. First, I wanted to do a brief presentation on Dr. King's life. Martin Luther King Jr. was born on January 15th, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, and he was killed at the age of 39 in Memphis, Tennessee on April 4th, 1968. The library system has many books on Dr. King and his family, so please visit our branches or our website if you'd like to check them out. The library system also has many of his papers, speeches, sermons, and books that Dr. King authored himself, such as the books Why We Can't Wait, Letter from a Birmingham Jail, and The Trumpet of Conscience. We have these materials in print, ebook, and audiobook. Dr. King's family. He was born at the home of his parents, Martin Sr. and Alberta, on Auburn Avenue in Atlanta, Georgia. King was their second child between his siblings Christine and AD. Dr. King was born with the name Michael, but in 1934, King's father changed his own name and that of his 5-year-old sons to after traveling to Germany and being inspired by the Protestant Reformation leader Martin Luther. King and Coretta Scott married in June 1953. She was an accomplished concert singer and a civil rights activist. In 1968, Coretta Scott King founded the King Center for Nonviolent Social Change, which has become a living legacy to Dr. King and an international resource center for social justice. Dr. King and Coretta Scott King had 4 children, Yolanda, Martin III, Dexter, and Bernice. Dr. King's father and grandfather were ministers who pastored at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. Young Martin followed in his family's footsteps, and he became an ordained minister when he was 19 years old. King was such a gifted student that he entered Morehouse College at age 15. And after graduating in 1948, he studied at the Crozier Theological Seminary in Pennsylvania, where he developed his ideas about nonviolence as a way of social reform. From 1954 to 1960, King was pastor of the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, where he began his civil rights activism. And he later served with his father as co-pastor of the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. In 1955, Dr. King helped to found the Montgomery Improvement Association, which was formed to improve race relations in Montgomery, Alabama. As president of the organization, King led the nonviolent Montgomery bus boycott in 1955, which ultimately led to the desegregation of the city's buses. In 1957, King worked with Ralph Abernathy and many others to found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which battled segregation and achieved civil rights using methods such as sit-ins and demonstrations. They organized the March on Washington on August 28, 1963, which protested racial discrimination in employment and in schools and demanded fair wages for all workers. And the civil rights movement, largely due to the leadership of Dr. King, led to significant change in the US, including the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which banned discrimination in employment and public accommodation based on race, color, religion, or national origin. And there was also the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which restored and protected the right to vote. So I wanted to give you a little bit about the actual King Memorial on the National Mall. This is the official address, 1964, noting the year he won the Nobel Peace Prize. So of course, the memorial is down on the mall. And in general, it is, if you're coming from Maryland, you're gonna get on 95 and bear along here, Main Avenue, and then you curve around to actually go into the memorial. So just to get a sense of where it is on the mall, it's around the tidal basin, but it's right here. And here's on the right side, a more detailed picture of where the memorial is and the different aspects of it. The Stone of Hope, the Mountain of Despair, the inscription wall, and the bookstore. But it's right there on the tidal basin. And it was dedicated on August 28th, 2011. So now I want to introduce our guide for tonight to the King Memorial, National Park Service Ranger Jennifer Epstein. Since 1998, Jennifer has been the education specialist for the National Mall and Memorial Parks Division. Her range is vast because she is responsible for interpreting a wide variety of Park Service sites, including the Washington Monument, the Vietnam veterans, Korean veterans, FDR, Thomas Jefferson, Lincoln, and Eisenhower memorials, as well as the World War I and II memorials, Ford's Theater, as well as Dr. King's Memorial. First inspired by her love of history by her 5th grade teacher, Ranger Jen loves meeting new people, young and old, who visit her sites here in DC and virtually across the country. So welcome, Ranger Jen.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Boy, I feel old listening to all of that. I can go ahead and just share my screen now.
Okay, let me stop sharing mine, and
Okay.
then
Great,
okay.
thank you.
Okay, I stopped.
Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for having me. Everything good? You can see my picture of the memorial? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so wow, okay, I'm ready to roll. This is late for me, but I'm good. So I hope that most of you have had the opportunity to visit Dr. King's Memorial. As Lorraine said, it's right along the tidal basin. 1964 Independence Avenue, that was the address they chose, although most of the time we don't deal with addresses. We just say get off the metro and walk to the tidal basin and you'll find it. And when I'm talking about Dr. King, and I've been doing it a lot this month because it's a very popular time around his birthday, I feel like the story of Dr. King is so intertwined with the Lincoln Memorial that I need to sort of start there. And I also know that I like to talk a lot. And if you all have questions along the way, please don't wait for me to stop talking. Feel free to put your questions in the chat box, or even wave at me or whatever. This photo, I just wanted to, as you were just looking at the map, just in case you wanted a visual of this. This is a photo taken from the top of the Washington Monument, which is open and available for you to go visit. Check out recreation.gov and you can get a ticket and reserve a time to go in. We're doing really small groups right now because if you've ever been in the Washington Monument, you know it's a pretty tight space. So from the 500-foot level, looking west across the mall here, west, I always have to stop. Of course, you see the Lincoln, you see the World War II. I was out there this morning. We were like the only people out there. It was pretty cool. But Dr. King's Memorial is visible here off to the left, right along the tidal basin. And yeah, this is a really neat view of the mall. You can see all the way into Virginia, the Potomac. As Lorraine said, I've been doing a lot of virtual programs lately, and to be able to show people who don't know Washington all of the highlights from this one photo is pretty cool. You can see the Arlington House up on the hill in Arlington Cemetery. So anyway, just to put in context, Lincoln is here, and it's not even maybe 10 minutes to walk to Martin Luther King from the Lincoln Memorial. But Dr. King is so, of course, connected to the Lincoln Memorial because of the March on Washington in 1963. And we talk about that an awful lot. I also feel like I can't, I think I was supposed to say this later, but I'm very obsessed with Lincoln right now because Lincoln was dedicated in 1922. So it's going to be 100 years old this year, come Memorial Day weekend. So we're really thinking a lot about how the meaning of that memorial has changed over time. And maybe I'll come back sometime and talk to you all about that because it's a fascinating story of what it was like 100 years ago. Here's the crowd that came to the March on Washington on August 28th, 1963. Guesstimate is 250,000 people attended this march. And while maybe the government and the folks in charge were a little nervous about all these people coming to Washington, it ended up being, of course, a very peaceful You know, all these people came, but they came with, you know, this vision of standing up and sharing their voices and believing in this, you know, march for freedom and jobs. And so this is it was a miraculous day with all of these people, and just a really incredible time. If you're familiar with the DC area and you've lived here a while, you might notice that there's some buildings in this picture that don't look like they belong there. Looking towards the Washington Monument along the reflecting pool, we still have all of these, what they called tempos, temporary buildings, part of the War Department before the Pentagon was built in the early part of the 1900s. They built up all these buildings. They were on both sides of the reflecting pool. There's even a picture of a bridge at one point around World War II time across the reflecting pool, so people in these buildings could go to people in these buildings. But by 1963, these buildings were the only ones left. They would get knocked down in the 1970s and create the area that we know today as Constitution Gardens, this park right here. And where the Vietnam Wall is, you can see that, just this kind of little bend in the grass there. So that whole area has changed since 1963. So really fascinating just to look at how Washington has changed over the years. I point this picture out all the time. It's one of my favorites. I don't know if I've got anything going on. I lost my chat box. Anybody know why it is that I personally would like these photos or this photo so much? I don't know if you all have the ability to shout out or put in the chat, but please feel free. Yes, exactly. The ranger in the photo. Very excited about that. Of course, my mind always goes to like what it's like for me. Did this guy know? There's two of them actually, one guy here and one guy kneeling down close in front. You know, did these guys know when they got to work in the morning what they would be doing, or had they had some preparation? And by the way, you're going to Lincoln today, and oh, you know, there's going to be 250,000 people out there. I just wonder what kind of preparation they had in order for an event like this. And it also makes me think that, you know, I could be there when big things like this are happening. I don't know if you even know a big thing like this is happening when you're in that moment, but this must have been something to be representing our agency at this event. One of my favorite pictures from the event, I feel like, you know, when you're talking about 250,000 people and you're talking about someone as famous as Dr. King and the other participants in the March on Washington, it's hard to kind of get it down to just this really personal story. So I like to tell this one. The girl in the picture is Edith Lee Payne, and this is her 12th birthday. She's from Detroit, Michigan, and she comes to Washington, D.C. with her mom. Her mom gets cut out of the picture, but she's standing right behind her, I think. And Edith's aunt lived in the DC area, and so they came to visit this August week. And Edith had heard Dr. King speak in Detroit, and she really wanted to come. When she heard he was speaking at the march, she's like, I want to go because I want to hear him speak again. He was such a powerful speaker. And she dragged her mom out here, and they are, you can tell, pushed up against the fence. I wonder if I have my other, yeah, I think she's on this side of the pool, if I remember correctly. But I love the expression on her face. Most of the time, my job is doing educational programs, and I ask the students all the time to look at her face and try and imagine what she must be thinking. She's in this crowd of all of these people. She's 12 years old. What is that expression all about? And it's, you know, to me, it's serious. I don't know if you all have some thoughts about what you think she might be thinking in this moment as she's part of this event. So the best part of this story is that Edith did not know this picture was taken of her on her 12th birthday. She would find it, I want to say, in the early 2000s. A friend of hers came across it in a calendar and shared it with her. And so then Edith went off to find the photographer and learn all about it and be able to, you know, use this photo to tell her story. And in fact, her whole sort of, you know, path had a lot to do with her attendance at this event, because she would go on to have a career where she was promoting civil rights for most of her life. And we used this picture in our brochure for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial. And when she saw it, she called us, and that's how we've gotten to get to know her. The last time, I feel like the last time, maybe one of the last times I talked to her, she was talking about how she had spent the last presidential election day helping to count ballots. So I think she's a great example of, the civic-minded person dedicated to the cause and really keeping that alive, and probably was greatly influenced. I mean, she says being a part of this event, hearing those people speak that day, particularly Dr. King, was a very influential in her life and her career path. I also have to point out this little banner that she's holding on to is pretty impressive. She held on to it for a long time. I love that it says, I was there at the march. So she had this for a really long time. She told me at one point her house even had a fire and she lost a lot of her belongings, and this banner stuck around. She still held on to it. And she started to think about, what she should do with it, and realizing that it was, such a souvenir from a momentous event that maybe she should share it. And so she came to Washington a few years ago and she donated that banner to the African American History and Culture Museum. So if you find yourself over there one day and you're in the March on Washington section, be sure to look out for Miss Edith's banner, because it's part of the exhibit, as I understand it. At least I'm sure her picture is somewhere. So hopefully you can find that there. And of course, people always want to know about Miss Edith. And why was my thing not working? I think I put them. Yeah, here we are. Out at the Dr. King Memorial. The last time I think she was in town, a couple years ago. She likes to come to Washington in August for her birthday. And so she'll often come and visit us around the time that the march happened. So I believe she came this year and a few years ago, before all of what's happening now was happening. And she she came to visit and bring that banner to the museum, and we got a chance to visit. And I feel like, this huge event happened and all these people, and there's so many different stories. This is one that I happen to know, and I feel like it helps, put a little bit more of a personal spin on this just massive event that happened here on the mall. So if you've been to the Lincoln Memorial, I hope you've had a chance to maybe, yes, that is me. Yep. Hopefully you've had a chance to come visit the Lincoln and stand in the spot where Dr. King stood. We spend a lot of time on the National Mall talking about ideas and events, and most of the time it's not at a place where something happened. We don't talk about, Washington being where his monument is, although he might have been at some point in time before his monument was. But here we are at the Lincoln Memorial where something monumental happened. And so in 2003, they carved into the step the words "I have a dream," Martin Luther King Jr., the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, in August 28th, 1963. And so I always encourage people to come here, stand there, try and imagine what it would be like. You saw that view of the crowd, and people were probably in the reflecting pool that day. It was August, it was hot. We don't recommend anybody going into the reflecting pool today. And so stand there and take it all in and imagine what it would be like to share your dream with 250,000 people from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. I remember when this was carved, it was 2003, it was the 40th anniversary. Coretta was still alive. She was there watching them carve it. I think all the children were there watching them carve it. So we have photos of that. And I guess that got them thinking that maybe we should have more of a memorial to Dr. King. And there was talk of maybe doing it near the Lincoln Memorial. And then it became bigger, and they said, you know what, we need more space. And so they would move over towards the tidal basin where Dr. King's memorial is today. And Lorraine, you're correct that the plan was to dedicate the memorial on August 28th, 2011. And that's where what we say happened. But if you all recall, if you've been around this area a while, that was the week that we had the earthquake. And so the earthquake happened on a Tuesday. And the dedication was supposed to be that Saturday, the 28th. And that weekend, we had a hurricane. We had an earthquake and a hurricane in the very same week. And so all the chairs were laid out behind this memorial on that field between where the bookstore is and where Independence is and the river is. all the chairs were laid out. They were ready to dedicate it, and they were afraid of the hurricane, and they packed up all those chairs, and the dedication actually didn't happen until October. And so it's really funny because they'd already carved it into the wall in the bookstore, and they didn't want to, I guess, change it. So I guess if you look it up, it says we dedicated it on August 28th, but funny thing, it was October. And so the idea for this memorial, as most of our memorials, they're a result of design competition, and design was chosen to be this based on a quote from the I Have a Dream speech. In the midst of it all, he's talking about his dream, and he says, we should hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. And so literally we've got the mountain of despair, and a piece of it is missing, this mountain of despair representing segregation and the sadness Dr. King as a young person might have felt growing up in the segregated South. And yet there's a piece missing. When you come to visit, you can walk through that mountain and you come across the stone of hope. And Dr. King obviously brought hope to so many people. When you look at it head on, you probably notice seems to be something missing. Part of this statue looks like it's not quite all the way done. Anybody have any thoughts on why that is?
There's no legs.
The legs are missing, right? Why do you think that is?
Because the legs aren't on the rock.
Because why?
Because they didn't.
Why though?
I don't know.
Well, you got us started. Thank you. Yes.
Could it be that because he is supposed to represent hope, you don't know what the end is going to be, and so
That's
he's
true.
still coming toward it and walking toward it. So he's got to step each piece. But because we don't know what the end will be, they left some of the rock there. But you can clearly see that he's made a dent in the rock, and he's begun the fight. And so
Yeah.
we don't know what the end will be, but so they left those other rocks up there so that someone will chisel away the rest of the rocks and the stone, and then it will be a whole, it will no longer be a hope, it will actually be a realization.
Wow, that's beautiful. Yeah, that's a really neat idea. I was talking to kids the other day and someone said, yeah, eventually the rest of the stone's gonna just have to fall away. And I thought, yeah, that's a really neat idea. I really like how you said that. Yeah, I guess most people agree that it's not because we didn't pay the bill. It was definitely done on purpose to indicate that, that maybe this isn't finished. Nicole said his work isn't done. That's often what we think about, that the unfinished work, the unfinished statue reminds us of the unfinished work that he didn't get to finish. He was 39 when he was killed. Most people are very surprised that he was so young when that happened. And as others are saying, others can continue the legacy because there's still more to be done. Vivian, did you want to add anything? See your hand up.
Yes, I was going to say that I think they probably ran out of money, but I guess that's not right.
We've had to make some changes, and I didn't get into this at all. They had a quote on the side. Does anybody remember the story about the quote? There was a quote on the opposite side of the memorial, not on the the Mountain of Despair quote is on one side, and on the other side was a quote that that King had said, sort of. And what ended up happening was they sort of misquoted it. It was a much longer quote that got shortened because they felt that it should be symmetrical, which is ridiculous, really, because there's two lines of a quote on one side. They thought there should be 2 lines of a quote on the other side. But when you take a quote that's not supposed, is much longer. Now, of course, as I started this story, I'm going to forget the quote. But it was, if you're going to call me a drum major, call me a drum major for justice, call me a drum major for righteousness. There's one other word, call me a drum major for peace, maybe. I feel like there's 3 words in there. Anyway, that's a really long quote. And when you say, if you're going to call me this, then you're not saying exactly that I was. And what they ended up doing was putting the quote, "I was a drum major for justice, peace, and righteousness," if I've got those words right. And so people complained because that doesn't sound the same exactly. I mean, saying if you think I'm something versus I was something, that comes across as very different, makes Dr. King sound very different. And, you know, if you're going to quote somebody, you really should quote them properly in a memorial like this. And so somehow they found a way to make sure that got fixed as well. And the decision was, instead of trying to replace it, they just knocked that quote out. So when you come to visit and you're on this side of the memorial, you only see just the plain rock now, no quote on that side. So that was really interesting to see what goes into, you know, a memorial getting built and dedicated, and then you know, corrected if need be. But yeah, there's all kinds of ideas about this unfinished statue, and you know, there's things that we talk about and we think about, but there's really no right or wrong answer on any of this. It's really what you see and what you think. And that's the beauty of these memorials, is they're open for interpretation. They call us interpreters in the job that we do. It's us to kind of help tell some stories, but it's really up to you to decide what you think it's all about. One of the things that I try to talk to the kids about is this idea of like, who's going to finish the work that Dr. King started. And one of the things, you know, the lessons we can get from him is his belief in nonviolence, and that it's really important to use your words and not fight. And we see a lot of words on display here. There's 2 walls of quotes on either side. I think we're going to talk about those in a little bit. And they are displayed. There's some of them things he wrote, some of them things he said, all of them, you know, labeled with the dates and places that it happened. Gives you some real time to walk through here and think about the different things that he was saying. If you were standing, when we were looking at the statue head on, when you're looking out from with the statue behind you, this is the view that you see the tidal basin. This is a cherry blossom tree, maybe almost ready to start blooming soon. And the Thomas Jefferson Memorial off in the distance. You know, we find ourselves in an interesting little scrape with this whole Jefferson Memorial business. We've got this guy who was president. He was writing the Declaration of Independence. He wrote, "All men are created equal." It's right up there on the wall. And then you look at the way he lived his life and you recognize, well, wait a minute. All men are created equal, yet you have enslaved people working on your plantation. So we look at this kind of line that we have on the National Mall. If you were to like draw with a pencil, if you could, from Jefferson's memorial, where he gives us this idea that all men are created equal, that's kind of like the foundation for where we're starting our country from. But recognizing that he's not the guy who's going to live up to this ideal. And we draw a line from Jefferson's memorial straight to where Dr. King is. And we keep going. Just beyond Dr. King is Lincoln's memorial. And we see that Lincoln is going to use those same words in his Gettysburg Address, which is on the wall at the Lincoln Memorial. And he's going to get us a step closer to realizing that ideal through ending slavery. And then we have, still on the same line, Dr. Martin Luther King's memorial. And we know he's going to get us a little bit closer, fighting to end segregation. And so hopefully, you know, our history is far from perfect, but we have these opportunities where we can learn and build from the next generation or the next generation. And we see that just playing out on our National Mall, where we finally, you know, have this memorial to a civil rights leader right there on the National Mall, right there on the tidal basin. This is kind of a pretty, maybe spring day, not quite sure what season, but here's a view of Dr. King's memorial, and it falls in this line, and it helps tell a more complete story of our country. And so it's a really neat place to be. I hope you've all had a chance to visit. I'll stop talking. I'm sure I went over, but thank you all for your patience, and feel free to throw any questions at me if you have anything.
Yes, does anybody have any questions for Ranger Jen? We'll take a few. You can, you know, unmute yourself and ask the question if you do.
I have a question. I'm sure Park Services keeps a tally of how many people come down to visit the monuments. I'm assuming, I don't know, I'm not sure. I'm assuming. And so after having said that, so I guess you would probably get more people down there around his birthday months, or you get more people down there in the summer months just because it's the summer and more people are coming to the city to explore all the different monuments.
Yeah, we do get a lot of people in January, but it's usually cold.
Right.
I'm gonna say spring is the busiest, because when cherry blossoms come and when every 8th grader in America comes to Washington, D.C. on a regular year for their school trip, we are inundated with people. Spring to me is the the most beautiful time of year on the National Mall, but it is very, very busy. And yes, we get a lot of people in the summer. But springtime is pretty crazy. I would guess that's the busiest. But you know what? This is still, it's 10 years old last year. It's still considered new. And so there's still, people here all year round.
But do you keep a tally of how many people you think come, or the people just come and go and you just kind of look at them and think, oh, this was a lot of people this time, or not?
Yeah, you know what? We have a really random system for counting. It's,
Okay.
it's really hard, you're not out there all day long just to be counting the people who come through. So we have a system whereby we're supposed to do counts 6 times a day for 15 minutes at 6 random times every day. It's a different time. And it's oh, I'm just kind of embarrassed. It's a computer system or a program that goes into a computer system somehow and punches out our visitation. And, yes, I can say we count, but can I say that that's really, I don't know. It's yes, we have numbers. Currently, they still, I think, say that the Lincoln is the most visited of our memorials. But this is probably right up there. But do I have specific, I mean, there is data. I just don't happen to have it off the top of my head. But, what's the word?
No,
based on
that's
my experience, it's springtime that's the busiest.
No, that's good. I just was curious. That's all. That's fine. Thank you for that.
Sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
This is for you and Lauren. Have you ever met Dr. King?
I am not old enough. I was born a few years too late. I was at the dedication. I heard his daughter speak. I feel like, and now I'm trying to remember, maybe I'm just making this up and I'm thinking because I've seen pictures. I remember when Coretta was there for the carving into the stone on the steps. I don't think I ever got close enough to meet her or anything. I've definitely been close when Martin III, he used to come on a birthday. I don't know if he's coming this year or not, but on the birthday when they'll lay a wreath, the MLK Memorial Foundation. And I've been close by. I haven't really met them though, but I don't know if you all noticed this, but his sister is still alive, Christine.
Lauren, have you ever met him?
Me and Lorraine? No. I shouldn't say this on air, but I was born the year he died.
Okay.
So, yes.
Okay, you've been answering most of the questions for me, right?
But somebody had a question. Are there Park Service resources available, like
Yep.
coloring books, pamphlets, etc.?
So we definitely have brochures. They are at the memorial. There's a little ranger station. It's attached to the bookstore. So at one end of the building, you could go into the bookstore, which I think is one of our best stores that we have. It's a nice space and there's got some really neat stuff in it. And attached to that, if you came out of it and went to the window around the side, there's bathrooms at the opposite end of the building, but there's a ranger window where you can pick up a brochure. You could also pick up a brochure inside the bookstore. And they would have all kinds of resources. They probably have coloring books. We have a junior ranger program, which is for the for the entire park. So it includes activities for all the different memorials that you can go to visit. And then you would get participants would earn a badge. I don't have my badge even on today, but it's like a wooden little badge that you could earn. All of our national parks have the Junior Ranger program. It's an opportunity to, get young people excited about the parks, and they can earn this badge and collect them. They used to be made out of plastic, and kids would put them on vests, and you could hear sometimes they would come into like the park and they would be jingling because all the metal on the little plastic badges would be jingling. It was really cute. And now they make them out of wood, which is still cool, but they don't jingle.
Well, Ranger Jen, we thank you so much for your presentation, for your interpretation, for your information, for your insight, for your stories.
you.
We have been so enriched, and I know I am encouraged to go down there once again, if for no other reason, just to see it in a different season. I definitely want to see it when it's snowing. I just want to do that. But I thank you
Beautiful.
so much. Did you have any final comments or announcements or anything you want to say? Or
Yeah, I know. I'm sure people are wondering about the holiday weekend. I just heard the weather forecast. It's not sounding very good for Monday if you wanted to come out. There is usually a wreath laying ceremony, and I believe it's probably early in the morning, and it's with the Martin Luther King Memorial Foundation, not so much the National Park Service doing that. So I don't think I have specific details, but I bet if you check the post or Google, you can find out for sure the specifics. But usually the foundation does some event on his birthday. We usually do, I think, the actual birthday. I think we put a wreath out at the memorial, which is January 15th. But yeah, it's lovely. Thank you all so much for the nice words. If you're ever out on the mall, please look for me. I'm usually out with student groups. I do mostly work with schools and teachers, but feel free to ask for me if I'm around. And I hope you all have a chance to come out and see us real soon. And maybe I can come back another time and talk to you about some different memorials if you're all interested.
well, while I'm putting up my thank you, Ranger Jen. We really appreciate it. While I'm putting up my screen again, I think Mr. Roden was able to put in the quotes in the chat. If anybody wants to make any comments about the 3 quotes we were going to discuss, please do. But let me go back to sharing my screen. Can everybody see it? Okay, good. So we were gonna do a discussion, but everybody can still do that. They can put it on our social media and everything, and that's fine. Oops, I'm going backwards. Let's see. So I just wanted to list a few, and here are the quotes we were going to discuss. So maybe at home, if anybody wants to take a screenshot, maybe discuss them with your family and friends, how you think these relate to the U.S. today and to the world today. These are 3 quotes that are engraved on the memorial, 3 of the 14. So maybe that's a good thing for everybody to have maybe a discussion with their family or friends on Monday about some of these quotes, and they are on their website. And let's see, we have so many resources on Dr. King and events, and one of them is happening tomorrow with one of our participants tonight, Marcia. So she has done a Martin Luther King Read Aloud, and it will be tomorrow, posted on all of our social media at 10 a.m. It's mostly for the younger ones, but all ages are welcome. So please go to our Martin Luther King Read Aloud tomorrow. Of course, we're the library. We have so many books on Dr. King, and these are a few listed here. Uh, I would say this second one, The Three Mothers, we did an interview with the author last year. So that is on our YouTube channel. So check out these books, that adult books that we have on Dr. King. And we have several, many youth books on Dr. King. I just highlighted a few here. One on the actual memorial, Martin's Big Words by Doreen Rappaport and Brian Collier, a wonderful book. And then Love Will See You Through, written by his niece. So these books, we have these books, some of them, the middle one is an e-video through Hoopla. So check these out too. And we, of course, we have electronic resources, several documentaries and videos on Dr. King and his legacy through Hoopla and Canopy. And all of these are free with your library card number. So just go to our website, pgcmls.info, and you can stream them. And then the final one, American Mosaic, has articles, commentaries, and videos about Dr. King and the civil rights movement, as well as it has a 3D virtual tour of the King Memorial on the mall. And next, this is the website for the memorial and some basic information on it. Of course, it's open 24 hours a day. The closest metro is Smithsonian. And like Ranger Jen said, there is a wonderful bookstore and it's open daily from 10 to 6. So check it out. And the National Park Service also has a historical park in Atlanta for Dr. King. This is the web address. You can visit it virtually or when you're down in Atlanta. It's a wonderful complex. And attached to it is the King Center, developed by Dr. King's family. And they have so many resources and in particular this week and next week, they have a lot of virtual events going on. So this is their website if you'd like to check them out.
I totally recommend them. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no,
but,
that's fine.
I've worked with Ranger Marty down in Atlanta, and he and I did some joint programs last year together, doing the Dr. King story from Atlanta and then from Washington. And they do great stuff there. You can see the house he was born. You can see the church that that he preached at, and it's also where his tomb is. So it's the kind of the full story of his life in Atlanta. So check that out. Tell him Ranger Jen sent you.
Thank you. So I just thank you, Ranger Jen. I thank everyone for participating this evening. The Prince George's County Memorial Library System is here to serve you. So come into our branches, we're open, or visit us virtually through our website, pgcmls.info, or give us a call. When the library is open, you can call this number and get in contact with us, or contact us by email and we'll get back to you within 2 working days. So thank everyone so much and have a wonderful evening and a wonderful Dr. King Memorial on Monday. Good night.